Question 1. Market research demonstrates a significant increase in the adoption of advanced endpoint detection and response (EDR) solutions across the industry. Your organization is considering implementing a new EDR product to enhance its existing antivirus software and host-based intrusion detection systems, HIDS. Which of the following approaches is the most appropriate for ensuring compliance with relevant regulatory frameworks and maintaining a robust security posture? Option A. Prioritize the technical features of the EDR solution, such as its threat detection capabilities and speed, and implement it without a detailed review of its impact on data governance or compliance with specific regulations. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the new EDR solution's compatibility with existing security controls, its effect on data handling and privacy policies, and its alignment with all applicable regulatory requirements, including data retention and incident reporting mandates. Option C. Implement the EDR solution in a limited pilot phase, and if it appears to function adequately from a technical standpoint, proceed with a full rollout without further regulatory or compliance review. Option D. Immediately deploy the new EDR solution across all endpoints, relying on the vendor's claims of enhanced security and assuming it will seamlessly integrate with existing systems. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the new EDR solution's compatibility with existing security controls, its effect on data handling and privacy policies, and its alignment with all applicable regulatory requirements, including data retention and incident reporting mandates. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity where a new technology, while offering potential benefits, introduces new risks that must be carefully evaluated against existing security controls and regulatory requirements. The challenge lies in balancing innovation with the imperative to maintain a robust security posture that complies with applicable regulations. A hasty or incomplete assessment could lead to significant security vulnerabilities, data breaches, and non-compliance penalties. The professional must navigate the technical complexities of the new technology and its integration, while also understanding the broader impact on the organization's risk landscape and legal obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a thorough impact assessment that specifically considers the implications of the new endpoint security solution on existing controls, data handling practices, and regulatory compliance. This assessment should identify potential conflicts or gaps created by the new technology, such as how the EDR solution interacts with existing DLP policies, or if the new antivirus software's logging capabilities meet the retention requirements mandated by relevant regulations. By systematically evaluating the new solution against established security baselines and regulatory frameworks, the organization can proactively identify and mitigate risks before deployment. This aligns with the principle of due diligence and the requirement to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk, as often stipulated in data protection regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new endpoint security solution without a comprehensive impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses the critical step of risk identification and mitigation, potentially leaving the organization exposed to new threats or creating conflicts with existing security policies and regulatory mandates. For instance, if the new EDR solution generates excessive logs that are not properly managed or retained according to data protection laws, it could lead to non-compliance. Deploying the solution based solely on vendor claims without independent validation or integration testing also represents a failure. Relying on marketing materials without understanding how the solution functions within the specific organizational environment and against specific regulatory requirements is a dereliction of professional duty. This could result in the solution not performing as expected, creating security gaps, or inadvertently violating data privacy regulations by mishandling sensitive information. Focusing only on the technical features of the new endpoint security solution, such as its detection rates, without considering its impact on data governance, incident response procedures, or compliance with regulations like those governing data breach notification, is another critical failure. Security is not merely about technology. It is about processes, people, and compliance. An incomplete assessment that overlooks these broader implications can lead to significant legal and reputational damage. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-based approach to evaluating new security technologies. This involves 1. Understanding the organizational context. Identify existing security controls, data assets, and regulatory obligations. 2. Defining clear objectives. What is the organization trying to achieve with the new technology? 3. Conducting a thorough impact assessment. Evaluate the technology's technical capabilities, integration requirements, and potential risks against existing controls and compliance frameworks. 4. Performing pilot testing and validation. Ensure the technology functions as expected in the production environment and does not introduce new vulnerabilities. 5. Developing a deployment and management plan. Outline how the technology will be implemented, configured, monitored, and maintained. 6. Continuous monitoring and review. Regularly assess the effectiveness of the security controls and update them as needed to address evolving threats and regulatory changes. Question 2. Comparative studies suggest that a clear understanding of foundational security concepts is paramount for effective risk management. In the context of U.S. federal information security regulations, particularly those influenced by NIST guidelines, which of the following definitions most accurately describes risk in relation to assets, threats, and vulnerabilities? Option A. Risk is the potential for a threat to cause harm to an asset. Option B. Risk is the potential for loss or damage to an asset that could occur if a threat exploits a vulnerability. Option C. Risk is a measure implemented to reduce the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. Option D. Risk is a weakness in an asset that could be exploited by a threat. The correct answer is B. Risk is the potential for loss or damage to an asset that could occur if a threat exploits a vulnerability. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a certified security professional, CSP, to apply fundamental security definitions and terminology within the strict confines of U.S. regulatory frameworks, specifically focusing on the NIST Special Publications, SP, that underpin federal information security. The CSP must discern which definition accurately reflects the relationship between identified weaknesses and potential harm, a core concept in risk management. Careful judgment is required to avoid misinterpreting or misapplying these foundational terms, which could lead to ineffective security strategies and noncompliance. The correct approach accurately defines risk as the potential for loss or damage resulting from the exploitation of a vulnerability by a threat. This aligns directly with the principles outlined in NIST SP 800-30, Guide for Conducting Risk Assessments, which emphasizes that risk is a function of the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability and the resulting impact. By correctly identifying risk, a CSP can then prioritize countermeasures and security controls to mitigate these identified risks, ensuring compliance with federal mandates for information security. An incorrect approach that defines risk solely as a vulnerability misinterprets the concept. Vulnerability is a weakness, but it does not inherently represent risk until a threat can exploit it. This failure to incorporate the threat element leads to an incomplete understanding of potential harm and can result in misallocation of resources. Another incorrect approach that defines risk as a threat overlooks the necessity of a vulnerability for the threat to cause harm. Threats exist independently, but risk arises when a threat can exploit a weakness. Finally, an approach that defines risk as a countermeasure is fundamentally flawed. Countermeasures are actions taken to reduce risk, not the risk itself. This demonstrates a complete misunderstanding of the security lifecycle and the purpose of protective measures. Professionals should approach such situations by first recalling the foundational definitions as established by relevant regulatory bodies like NIST. They should then analyze the scenario to identify the presence of assets, potential threats, existing vulnerabilities, and the potential impact of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. This systematic breakdown allows for the accurate identification and definition of risk, which then informs the selection and implementation of appropriate countermeasures and controls, ensuring alignment with regulatory requirements and best practices. Question 3. The evaluation methodology shows that a significant data breach has occurred, potentially exposing the personal information of thousands of California residents. As the lead security professional, you have identified the immediate technical steps to contain the breach. However, you are also aware of the strict notification timelines and requirements under the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. Which of the following actions best represents a legally and ethically sound decision-making process in this critical situation? Option A. Prioritize a complete and exhaustive forensic investigation to understand the full scope of the breach before initiating any communication or notification to affected parties or regulatory bodies. Option B. Immediately implement technical containment measures and begin the process of notifying affected California residents and the California Attorney General as per CCPA requirements, while simultaneously documenting all actions. Option C. Focus solely on eradicating the threat and restoring systems to normal operation, deferring any notification or communication until after the internal security team has completed a thorough post-incident review. Option D. Share preliminary findings and technical details of the breach with a select group of industry peers for advice on containment strategies, without first considering data privacy notification obligations. The correct answer is B. Immediately implement technical containment measures and begin the process of notifying affected California residents and the California Attorney General as per CCPA requirements, while simultaneously documenting all actions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for security incident response with the long-term legal and ethical obligations concerning data privacy. A security professional must act swiftly to contain a breach, but their actions must also be compliant with relevant data protection laws, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, and adhere to professional codes of conduct. Failure to do so can result in significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of trust. The correct approach involves a structured, legally compliant incident response that prioritizes data subject rights and notification requirements. This means immediately initiating containment and eradication efforts, while simultaneously documenting all actions and preparing for the legally mandated notifications to affected individuals and regulatory bodies, as stipulated by the CCPA. This approach ensures that the organization not only addresses the immediate security threat, but also fulfills its legal and ethical duties regarding data privacy and breach notification. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate technical containment, without considering notification obligations, would violate the CCPA requirements for timely notification to consumers and the California Attorney General in the event of a data breach involving personal information. Another incorrect approach, which involves delaying notification to conduct an exhaustive forensic analysis before any communication, could exceed the legally permissible timeframes for notification, thereby failing to protect consumers' rights to be informed promptly about potential harm. Furthermore, an approach that involves sharing sensitive breach details with unauthorized third parties without a clear legal basis or contractual obligation would violate data protection principles and potentially intellectual property rights, leading to further legal complications and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates legal and ethical considerations into every stage of incident response. This framework should include 1. Immediate assessment of the incident's scope and potential impact on personal data. 2. Consultation with legal counsel to understand specific notification obligations under applicable laws like the CCPA. 3. Development of a containment and remediation plan that also accounts for data subject rights. And 4. Execution of a communication strategy that is both timely and compliant with legal requirements. This systematic approach ensures that security actions are not only technically sound, but also legally defensible and ethically responsible. Question 4. Regulatory review indicates that the organization's current security policies are outdated and do not adequately address emerging threats, leading to potential compliance gaps and increased risk exposure. The Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, is tasked with improving the security posture. Which of the following approaches best aligns with established security governance principles and regulatory expectations for a certified security professional CSP? Option A. Focus exclusively on deploying the latest security technologies and tools to address the identified threat landscape, assuming that technical solutions will compensate for any policy or procedural deficiencies. Option B. Immediately implement a broad, organization-wide security policy update that mandates the strictest possible controls across all systems and departments to mitigate all potential risks. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify specific vulnerabilities and threats, then develop and update security policies, standards, and procedures based on these findings. Simultaneously, implement a targeted security awareness training program and review/enhance incident response and business continuity plans. Option D. Wait for a significant security incident to occur before initiating a review and revision of security policies and incident response plans, using the incident as a catalyst for change. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify specific vulnerabilities and threats, then develop and update security policies, standards, and procedures based on these findings. Simultaneously, implement a targeted security awareness training program and review/enhance incident response and business continuity plans. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in security governance, balancing the need for robust security policies with the practical realities of organizational operations and the evolving threat landscape. The CISO must navigate the complexities of ensuring compliance with legal and regulatory mandates, while also fostering a security-aware culture and maintaining business continuity. The pressure to implement changes quickly without adequate planning or stakeholder buy-in can lead to ineffective solutions, resistance, and potential breaches. The professional challenge lies in demonstrating due diligence, achieving measurable security improvements, and aligning security initiatives with business objectives, all within the constraints of available resources and organizational dynamics. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and phased implementation of security enhancements, starting with a comprehensive risk assessment and policy review. This aligns with the core principles of security governance, which emphasize a risk-based approach to decision-making. By identifying specific vulnerabilities and threats, the organization can prioritize its efforts and allocate resources effectively. Developing and updating policies, standards, and procedures based on this assessment ensures that the security framework is relevant and addresses the most critical risks. Integrating security awareness training is crucial for fostering a security-conscious culture, which is a fundamental component of effective security governance and compliance. Finally, robust incident response and business continuity planning are essential for mitigating the impact of security events and ensuring operational resilience, directly addressing legal and regulatory requirements for preparedness. This methodical approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to establishing a mature security posture. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, sweeping policy change without a preceding risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Bypasses the fundamental principle of risk management, potentially leading to the misallocation of resources, the imposition of unnecessary controls, or the overlooking of critical vulnerabilities. This approach lacks the due diligence required to justify the scope and impact of the policy changes. Focusing solely on technical controls without addressing human factors or policy deficiencies represents another failure. Security is a combination of people, processes, and technology. Neglecting policy updates and security awareness training leaves significant gaps in the security posture, making the organization vulnerable to social engineering attacks and insider threats, and failing to meet comprehensive compliance requirements. Adopting a reactive approach, where policy changes are only made after a security incident, is a critical failure in proactive security governance. While incident response is vital, the absence of proactive planning and policy development indicates a lack of foresight and a failure to meet the spirit and letter of many regulatory frameworks that mandate preparedness and risk mitigation. This reactive stance often results in inadequate or rushed solutions that do not address the root causes of incidents. Professional reasoning. Security professionals should adopt a structured, risk-driven decision-making process. This begins with understanding the organization's business objectives and threat landscape. A thorough risk assessment should inform the development or revision of security policies, standards, and procedures. Stakeholder engagement is crucial throughout this process to ensure buy-in and practical applicability. Security awareness training should be a continuous program, tailored to different roles and responsibilities. Incident response and business continuity plans must be regularly tested and updated. This holistic and proactive approach ensures that security measures are effective, compliant, and aligned with business needs. Question 5. Consider a scenario where a certified security professional, CSP, is tasked with developing and implementing a new security awareness and training program for a mid-sized financial services firm. The firm has experienced a recent increase in phishing attempts and has identified a growing concern regarding potential insider threats due to increased remote work. The CSP needs to design a program that is effective, engaging, and sustainable, while also considering the limited time employees have for training. Which of the following approaches would be the most effective and professionally responsible strategy for developing and implementing this security awareness and training program? Option A. Focus solely on implementing advanced technical security controls to detect and prevent phishing and insider threats, assuming that employees will naturally adapt to the enhanced technical environment. Option B. Develop a mandatory, in-person, multi-day training seminar covering all security policies and procedures, to be conducted once every 2 years, with no ongoing reinforcement or testing. Option C. Implement a comprehensive, interactive online training module that covers all aspects of security awareness, including phishing, social engineering, and insider threats, to be completed annually by all employees, supplemented by quarterly simulated phishing campaigns. Option D. Conduct a one-time, brief online training session on basic password security, and then rely on IT to handle all security incidents as they arise. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive, interactive online training module that covers all aspects of security awareness, including phishing, social engineering, and insider threats, to be completed annually by all employees, supplemented by quarterly simulated phishing campaigns. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in security awareness and training, balancing the need for comprehensive education with the practical constraints of employee time and engagement. The difficulty lies in designing a program that is both effective in mitigating risks like phishing and social engineering, and sustainable within an organization's operational realities. A key challenge is ensuring that the training is not perceived as a mere compliance exercise, but as a vital component of the organization's security culture, which requires ongoing effort and adaptation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that integrates various training methodologies tailored to different learning styles and risk profiles. This includes regular, bite-sized phishing simulations and interactive modules that reinforce key concepts of social engineering and insider threat awareness. The emphasis on fostering a security-conscious culture through leadership buy-in and continuous reinforcement is crucial. This aligns with the principles of a robust security awareness program, which aims to embed security best practices into the daily routines of employees, thereby reducing the likelihood of successful attacks. Such an approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes the protection of organizational assets and sensitive data, and it is professionally responsible by proactively addressing known vulnerabilities. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that relies solely on an annual, lengthy compliance-based training session is insufficient. This method often leads to information overload, reduced retention, and a perception of the training as a bureaucratic hurdle rather than a critical security measure. It fails to address the dynamic nature of threats like phishing, which require continuous vigilance and updated knowledge. Another incorrect approach would be to focus exclusively on technical controls, without a corresponding emphasis on human factors. While technical measures are important, they are often circumvented by sophisticated social engineering tactics. Neglecting the human element leaves the organization vulnerable to attacks that exploit trust and human error. A third incorrect approach might involve a reactive training strategy, where training is only initiated after a security incident has occurred. This is a fundamentally flawed strategy, as it fails to prevent incidents and instead focuses on damage control. Proactive awareness and training are essential for building resilience and minimizing the impact of potential threats. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a risk-based, adaptive, and engaging approach to security awareness and training. This involves 1. Risk assessment, identifying the most prevalent and impactful threats to the organization, e.g., phishing, social engineering, insider threats. 2. Stakeholder engagement, securing buy-in from leadership and involving employees in the development and feedback process. 3. Diverse methodologies, employing a mix of training formats, e.g., simulations, interactive modules, workshops, regular communications to cater to different learning preferences and reinforce key messages. 4. Continuous improvement, regularly evaluating the effectiveness of the program through metrics e.g., phishing click rates, incident reporting, and adapting the content and delivery based on evolving threats and organizational needs. 5. Culture building, integrating security awareness into the organizational culture through consistent messaging, recognition of secure behaviors, and clear accountability. Question 6. The risk matrix shows a vulnerability with a high likelihood and high impact score, a second vulnerability with a high likelihood and medium impact score, and a third vulnerability with a medium likelihood and high impact score. Which of the following approaches best reflects a professional and compliant security principle for prioritizing remediation efforts? Option A. Focus solely on the vulnerabilities with the highest impact scores, irrespective of their likelihood. Option B. Prioritize remediation based on which vulnerability is easiest to fix, regardless of its risk score. Option C. Immediately address the vulnerability with the highest likelihood and highest impact score, then the one with the highest likelihood and medium impact score, and finally the one with the medium likelihood and high impact score. Option D. Address the vulnerability with the highest likelihood score, then the one with the highest impact score, and then the remaining vulnerability. The correct answer is C. Immediately address the vulnerability with the highest likelihood and highest impact score, then the one with the highest likelihood and medium impact score, and finally the one with the medium likelihood and high impact score. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational continuity with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities. The certified security professional CSP must exercise sound judgment to prioritize remediation efforts effectively, considering the potential impact on the organization's assets, reputation, and compliance posture. The risk matrix, while a valuable tool, is only one input into this decision-making process. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation that extends beyond the raw risk scores presented in the matrix. It necessitates understanding the context of each identified risk, including the likelihood and impact of exploitation, the sensitivity of the affected assets, and the organization's overall risk appetite. This approach aligns with the core principles of information security management, emphasizing a proactive and risk-informed strategy. Specifically, it reflects the guidance found in NIST SB 800-53, which mandates a risk-based approach to security controls and emphasizes the importance of considering the operational environment and mission needs when making security decisions. Ethical considerations also play a role, as a CSP has a duty to protect the organization's information assets and ensure the integrity of its operations. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the risk matrix's numerical scores without further analysis. This fails to account for qualitative factors that can significantly alter the perceived risk. For instance, a high-risk score might be associated with a low-impact event that is unlikely to occur, or a low-risk score might mask a critical vulnerability affecting highly sensitive data. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize remediation based on the ease of implementation rather than the actual risk reduction achieved. This can lead to a false sense of security, as low-effort fixes might address minor issues while leaving significant threats unaddressed. This deviates from the professional responsibility to implement controls that are commensurate with the identified risks. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's objectives and risk tolerance. The risk matrix should be used as a starting point for discussion and further investigation. This involves engaging with stakeholders, understanding the business context of identified risks, and performing a deeper analysis of potential impacts. The CSP should then develop a prioritized remediation plan that aligns with the organization's risk appetite and available resources, ensuring that the most critical vulnerabilities are addressed first. This systematic and context-aware approach is fundamental to effective security management. Question 7. The investigation demonstrates a significant anomaly detected on the primary web server, indicating potential unauthorized access and data exfiltration. The security team has confirmed the presence of malicious code and unusual network traffic patterns originating from an external IP address. What is the most appropriate and compliant next step to address this network security incident? Option A. Reboot the affected server to clear any active malicious processes and then monitor network traffic for any recurring anomalies. Option B. Initiate a full system backup of the compromised server and then proceed with a complete system restore to a known good state to ensure immediate operational continuity. Option C. Publicly announce a potential data breach to inform all stakeholders and begin the process of notifying regulatory bodies about the incident. Option D. Immediately isolate the affected server from the network to prevent further unauthorized access and data loss. Then proceed with detailed forensic analysis to identify the root cause and extent of the compromise. Correct answer is D. Immediately isolate the affected server from the network to prevent further unauthorized access and data loss. Then proceed with detailed forensic analysis to identify the root cause and extent of the compromise. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, where a detected anomaly requires immediate and effective response to mitigate potential damage and maintain operational integrity. The professional challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate and compliant course of action from several plausible, but not all equally effective or legally sound, options. The need for swift action must be balanced with adherence to established security protocols and regulatory requirements, demanding careful judgment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of incident response, starting with containment and eradication, followed by recovery and post-incident analysis. This aligns with best practices and regulatory frameworks such as those outlined by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, for incident handling, which are foundational for many U.S.-based cybersecurity standards. Specifically, the NIST SB 800-61 Rev. 2, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide, emphasizes containment as a primary step to prevent further damage. Following this with eradication and recovery ensures the system is not only secured, but also restored to a functional state. The detailed documentation and analysis are crucial for compliance, continuous improvement, and potential legal or audit requirements. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that immediately focuses on full system restoration without proper containment risks, allowing the threat to spread further, potentially compromising more systems or data. This failure to contain is a direct violation of incident response best practices and could lead to greater data breaches, violating data protection regulations. An approach that prioritizes immediate public disclosure without a thorough understanding of the incident and its scope is premature and potentially damaging, can lead to panic, loss of customer trust, and may violate notification requirements that specify the timing and content of disclosures based on the nature and severity of the breach, as often stipulated by state data breach laws. An approach that involves simply rebooting affected systems without identifying the root cause or eradicating the threat is insufficient. This is akin to treating a symptom without curing the disease. The threat may persist or re-emerge, leading to repeated incidents and a failure to meet the due diligence expected in maintaining a secure network, which could have legal ramifications if a subsequent breach occurs due to this oversight. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured incident response framework, such as the NIST Incident Response Lifecycle. This framework provides a clear roadmap for handling security incidents, ensuring that all critical steps are taken in a logical and compliant manner. When faced with an anomaly, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identification, confirming the anomaly is a genuine security incident. 2. Containment, taking immediate steps to limit the scope and impact of the incident. 3. Eradication, removing the threat and its root cause. 4. Recovery, restoring affected systems and data to normal operations. 5. Lessons learned, analyzing the incident to improve future defenses and response capabilities. This systematic approach ensures both technical effectiveness and regulatory compliance. Question 8. The analysis reveals that a newly appointed security manager for a large commercial complex is tasked with enhancing the effectiveness of the security personnel team. The team is responsible for daily patrols, access control, and responding to various emergencies, including fire alarms, medical incidents, and security breaches. The manager has identified that, while the team has undergone initial onboarding, there is a perceived gap in their readiness for complex, multifaceted emergency scenarios and a lack of consistent application of established communication protocols during drills. The manager is considering several strategies to address these deficiencies. Which of the following strategies best aligns with the professional responsibilities and ethical obligations of a certified security professional (CSP) in this context? Option A. Rely on the existing onboarding materials and assume that the team's experience will adequately prepare them for emergent situations, focusing only on updating the written emergency response plan. Option B. Conduct a series of brief, informal refresher sessions on basic security duties and encourage team leaders to manage emergency preparedness within their sub-teams. Option C. Prioritize immediate deployment of additional personnel to increase patrol coverage, deferring comprehensive emergency response training until after the peak operational season. Option D. Implement a mandatory, intensive training program focused on advanced emergency response techniques and communication simulations, coupled with a revised supervision schedule that includes regular spot checks and performance feedback sessions. Correct answer is D. Implement a mandatory, intensive training program focused on advanced emergency response techniques and communication simulations, coupled with a revised supervision schedule that includes regular spot checks and performance feedback sessions. Explanation: the analysis reveals a scenario where a security manager must balance operational efficiency with the critical need for thorough training and supervision of security personnel, particularly in the context of emergency response protocols. This is professionally challenging because inadequate training can lead to critical failures during emergencies, potentially resulting in harm to individuals or property, and significant legal and reputational damage. Conversely, overly burdensome or inefficient training can strain resources and impact day-to-day security operations. The manager must ensure that all personnel are not only aware of their roles and responsibilities, but are also proficient in executing them, especially under duress. This requires a nuanced understanding of the Certified Security Professional (CSP) domain, which emphasizes practical application of security principles and adherence to established best practices and regulatory expectations. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, risk-based training and supervision program that directly addresses the specific threats and emergency scenarios relevant to the organization. This includes regular drills, performance evaluations, and continuous professional development, ensuring that communication protocols are clear, understood, and practiced. This aligns with CSP principles that mandate a proactive and competent security workforce capable of effective incident management. Ethically and regulatorily, this approach demonstrates due diligence in protecting assets and personnel, fulfilling the duty of care expected of security professionals. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness in training, leading to superficial understanding of emergency procedures, is professionally unacceptable. This failure to adequately prepare personnel for critical events directly contravenes the CSP's emphasis on competence and preparedness, and could violate regulatory requirements for workplace safety and emergency management. Another incorrect approach that neglects regular supervision and performance feedback, assuming that initial training is sufficient, is also flawed. This oversight can lead to the erosion of skills and adherence to protocols over time, increasing the risk of operational failures. Furthermore, an approach that fails to establish and regularly test clear communication protocols during emergencies creates confusion and delays, directly impacting response effectiveness and potentially leading to adverse outcomes, which is a significant ethical and professional failing. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment to identify potential threats and emergency scenarios. This assessment should inform the development of a robust training curriculum that covers roles, responsibilities, emergency response, and communication protocols. Regular performance evaluations and refresher training are essential to maintain proficiency. Supervision should be consistent and constructive, focusing on identifying areas for improvement. Finally, all training and procedures must be documented and aligned with relevant industry standards and regulatory frameworks applicable to the CSP certification. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates a desire for a visually appealing and welcoming public park in a newly developed urban area. However, recent crime statistics in similar adjacent areas highlight concerns about vandalism and petty theft. As a certified security professional, CSP, tasked with advising on the park's design, which approach best balances the community's aesthetic preferences with effective crime prevention through environmental design (CTED) principles, adhering to U.S. regulatory frameworks. Option A. Install a comprehensive network of high-security fencing with limited controlled access points and robust electronic surveillance systems throughout the park. Option B. Implement a design that emphasizes clear sightlines, well-lit pathways, defined public and private zones through subtle landscaping and paving, and strategically place seating to encourage natural surveillance while ensuring accessible entry points. Option C. Prioritize extensive, dense landscaping and decorative fencing to create a visually rich and private atmosphere, with security cameras as the primary deterrent. Option D. Focus on maximizing open, unobstructed green spaces with minimal landscaping and no fencing, relying on community engagement programs to deter crime. The correct answer is C. Prioritize extensive, dense landscaping and decorative fencing to create a visually rich and private atmosphere, with security cameras as the primary deterrent. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing diverse stakeholder needs with established security principles, specifically CTED, within the defined regulatory framework for the Certified Security Professional (CSP) exam. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying CTED principles to a real-world development project where aesthetic preferences, community use, and security objectives may conflict. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen design approach effectively deters crime without unduly compromising the usability or appeal of the public space, all while adhering to relevant U.S. federal and state regulations concerning public safety and accessibility. The correct approach involves a comprehensive integration of CTED principles, focusing on natural surveillance through thoughtful site planning and landscaping, and implementing robust access control design. This aligns with the overarching goal of crime prevention by design, which is implicitly supported by federal guidelines and best practices in security management that CSPs are expected to uphold. Specifically, the emphasis on clear sightlines, well-lit pathways, defined public and private spaces, and strategically placed natural surveillance opportunities directly addresses the core tenets of CTED. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes the safety and security of the public while respecting the intended use of the space. An incorrect approach that prioritizes solely aesthetic landscaping without considering surveillance would fail to meet the security objectives of CTED. Overly dense or tall landscaping can create blind spots, providing cover for criminal activity and reducing natural surveillance, which is a direct contravention of CTED principles and could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence in security planning. Another incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on restrictive access control, such as excessive fencing or limited entry points, without balancing it with community access and usability, would also be professionally unacceptable. While access control is a CTED element, its implementation must be proportionate and not create an environment that feels unwelcoming or overly securitized, potentially hindering legitimate use and fostering a sense of alienation, which can indirectly lead to other social issues. This approach might also conflict with accessibility regulations if not carefully managed. A third incorrect approach that neglects the integration of CTED principles into the initial site planning phase, treating security as an afterthought, is also professionally flawed. CTED is most effective when embedded from the conceptual design stage. Retrofitting security measures or relying solely on technological solutions without considering the environmental design aspects is less effective and often more costly, demonstrating a lack of strategic security planning. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment that considers the specific context of the development, the potential threats, and the intended users. This should be followed by a systematic application of CTED principles, engaging with stakeholders to understand their needs and concerns, and then developing design solutions that integrate security, usability, and aesthetics. Professionals must consult relevant U.S. federal and state guidelines on crime prevention and public safety, ensuring that all design decisions are defensible and aligned with best practices and ethical obligations. Question 10. To address the challenge of ensuring robust application security within a U.S.-based organization adhering to relevant federal guidelines and industry best practices, which of the following approaches represents the most effective and ethically sound strategy for a certified security professional? Option A. Implement a comprehensive strategy that integrates secure coding practices throughout the development lifecycle, conducts regular vulnerability assessments and penetration testing, and deploys web application firewalls, WAF, for an additional layer of defense, ensuring strong input validation, authentication, and authorization mechanisms are foundational. Option B. Concentrate efforts exclusively on implementing rigorous input validation for all user-submitted data, considering this the most critical aspect of application security, while deferring comprehensive testing of authentication and authorization mechanisms. Option C. Focus solely on conducting thorough penetration testing after the application has been fully developed and deployed to identify and remediate any discovered vulnerabilities. Option D. Prioritize the implementation of a web application firewall, WAF, as the primary security control, assuming it will effectively mitigate most application-level threats without significant emphasis on secure coding or pre-deployment testing. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive strategy that integrates secure coding practices throughout the development lifecycle, conducts regular vulnerability assessments and penetration testing, and deploys web application firewalls, WAF, for an additional layer of defense, ensuring strong input validation, authentication, and authorization mechanisms are foundational. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a security professional to balance the immediate need for robust application security with the practical constraints of development timelines and resource allocation. The decision-making process must be grounded in established security principles and regulatory compliance, specifically within the U.S. regulatory framework applicable to the Certified Security Professional (CSP) exam. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective in mitigating risks and feasible within the organizational context. The correct approach involves a multi-layered strategy that integrates secure coding practices throughout the development lifecycle, complemented by proactive vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. This aligns with the principles of defense in depth and the shift-left security philosophy, which emphasizes addressing security early in the development process. Regulatory frameworks, such as those enforced by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, for federal systems and recommended for private sector organizations, advocate for secure software development lifecycles, SSDLC, that include requirements for secure coding, input validation, and robust authentication/authorization mechanisms. The use of web application firewalls, WAF, serves as an additional layer of defense, mitigating known and emerging threats. This comprehensive approach is ethically sound, as it prioritizes the protection of sensitive data and systems, fulfilling the professional obligation to safeguard organizational assets and user information. An incorrect approach that solely relies on penetration testing after development is completed fails to address security proactively. This method is reactive and can lead to costly rework and delays if significant vulnerabilities are discovered late in the cycle. It also neglects the foundational importance of secure coding practices, which are the first line of defense. Ethically, this approach may be seen as insufficient, as it does not demonstrate due diligence in embedding security from the outset. Another incorrect approach that focuses exclusively on implementing a WAF without addressing underlying secure coding practices or performing thorough testing is also professionally deficient. While a WAF can block many attacks, it is not a substitute for secure code. Vulnerabilities in the application itself can still be exploited, and a WAF might not be able to detect or prevent all novel or sophisticated attacks. This approach can create a false sense of security and does not meet the comprehensive security requirements mandated by many U.S. regulations that emphasize secure development. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes only input validation while neglecting other critical areas like authentication and authorization mechanisms is incomplete. Input validation is crucial, but it is only one component of secure application development. Without strong authentication and authorization, even well-validated inputs can lead to unauthorized access or privilege escalation. This fragmented approach fails to provide a holistic security posture and would not satisfy the requirements of comprehensive security standards. The professional reasoning process should involve understanding the organization's risk appetite, the sensitivity of the data being processed, and the relevant regulatory landscape. A security professional should advocate for a risk-based approach that integrates security into every phase of the software development lifecycle, from design and coding to testing and deployment. This includes establishing clear secure coding guidelines, implementing automated security testing tools, conducting regular vulnerability assessments and penetration tests, and deploying appropriate security controls like WAFs. The decision should always be to implement the most comprehensive and proactive security measures that are feasible and align with regulatory requirements and ethical obligations. Question 11. The review process indicates that the current perimeter security at a facility is fragmented, with individual components operating in isolation. To optimize the overall security posture and ensure compliance with the Certified Security Professional (CSP) exams jurisdiction's regulatory framework, which approach best integrates fences, gates, barriers, lighting, surveillance systems, CCTV cameras, access control systems, card readers, biometric scanners, and intrusion detection systems, IDs, into a cohesive and effective defense strategy. Option A, focusing solely on enhancing the physical perimeter with stronger fences and more robust gates, believing that a formidable physical barrier is the primary determinant of effective perimeter security. Option B, upgrading the existing CCTV system with higher resolution cameras and advanced analytics, assuming that improved visual monitoring will compensate for any deficiencies in physical barriers or access control. Option C, implementing a comprehensive layered security strategy that ensures physical barriers are complemented by effective lighting, robust surveillance, controlled access points, and timely intrusion detection, all integrated to provide overlapping security zones and early warning capabilities. Option D, installing the most advanced biometric scanners at all entry points, prioritizing cutting-edge technology for access control, without a thorough assessment of how this integrates with other perimeter security elements. Correct answer is C, implementing a comprehensive layered security strategy that ensures physical barriers are complemented by effective lighting, robust surveillance, controlled access points, and timely intrusion detection, all integrated to provide overlapping security zones and early warning capabilities. Explanation. The review process indicates a need to optimize perimeter security by integrating various components. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing effectiveness, cost, and compliance with regulatory frameworks. A security professional must not only understand the technical capabilities of different security systems, but also how they interrelate and contribute to an overall security posture that meets established standards. The challenge lies in selecting an approach that is not merely a collection of technologies, but a cohesive strategy that addresses identified vulnerabilities and adheres to the specific requirements of the Certified Security Professional (CSP) exam's jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a layered security strategy that leverages the strengths of each perimeter security element to create a robust defense. This means ensuring that fences and gates provide a physical deterrent, lighting enhances visibility for surveillance systems, CCTV cameras provide monitoring and evidence, access control systems manage entry points effectively, and intrusion detection systems, IDs, provide early warning of breaches. This layered approach is aligned with best practices in physical security, which emphasize redundancy and overlapping security measures to mitigate risks. The CSP exam's jurisdiction, like many, emphasizes a risk-based approach to security, where the selection and integration of security controls are directly tied to identified threats and vulnerabilities. An incorrect approach would be to focus solely on one aspect of perimeter security, such as only upgrading surveillance systems, without addressing physical barriers or access control. This fails to provide a comprehensive defense and leaves significant gaps in security. For example, relying only on CCTV without adequate physical barriers means that unauthorized individuals can easily bypass the visual monitoring. Another incorrect approach would be to implement advanced technologies without considering their integration or the training of personnel to operate them effectively. This leads to underutilization of resources and potential security failures. Furthermore, neglecting the regulatory requirements of the CSP exam's jurisdiction, such as specific standards for access control or the need for documented risk assessments, would be a critical ethical and professional failure. Professionals should approach such situations by first conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify vulnerabilities and threats specific to the environment. This assessment should then inform the selection and integration of perimeter security measures, ensuring a layered defense. The chosen solutions must be evaluated against the regulatory framework and best practices relevant to the CSP exam's jurisdiction. Finally, ongoing monitoring, maintenance, and periodic review of the security systems are essential to ensure their continued effectiveness and compliance. Question 12. What factors determine the appropriate scope and nature of public safety and security enhancements recommended by a certified security professional, considering the need to balance security objectives with legal and ethical obligations. Option A. A comprehensive risk assessment that identifies specific threats and vulnerabilities, coupled with strict adherence to all applicable legal statutes and ethical guidelines governing privacy and civil liberties. Option B. The subjective opinion of stakeholders regarding the most visible or intimidating security measures. Option C. The availability of the latest security technologies and the perceived threat level, irrespective of detailed risk analysis or legal review. Option D. The lowest cost option that provides a basic level of security, even if it does not fully address identified risks. Correct answer is A. A comprehensive risk assessment that identifies specific threats and vulnerabilities, coupled with strict adherence to all applicable legal statutes and ethical guidelines governing privacy and civil liberties. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the immediate need for public safety with the long-term implications of security measures, particularly concerning privacy and civil liberties. The Certified Security Professional, CSP, is tasked with recommending security enhancements that must be both effective and compliant with the relevant regulatory framework. The challenge lies in discerning which factors are paramount when making such recommendations, ensuring that the proposed solutions do not overstep legal boundaries or ethical considerations. Careful judgment is required to avoid over-reliance on technology that may infringe upon rights or implementing measures that are not proportionate to the identified risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment that is directly informed by the specific threats and vulnerabilities identified for the location, while simultaneously adhering to the established legal and ethical standards for public safety and security. This involves a systematic evaluation of potential hazards, the likelihood of their occurrence, and the potential impact. Crucially, it mandates that any proposed security measures must be proportionate to the identified risks and demonstrably necessary to mitigate them. This aligns with the principles of due process and the protection of individual rights, ensuring that security enhancements do not unduly infringe upon privacy or civil liberties. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and surveillance, would be central to this analysis, guiding the selection of appropriate technologies and operational procedures. The CSP's role is to ensure that the recommended measures are not only effective in enhancing security, but also legally sound and ethically defensible. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that solely focuses on the most advanced or technologically sophisticated security solutions, without a thorough risk assessment or consideration of legal and ethical constraints, is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to the implementation of costly and intrusive measures that are not justified by the actual threat landscape, potentially violating privacy rights and civil liberties. Such an approach often stems from a reactive mindset rather than a proactive, risk-based strategy. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost-effectiveness above all other considerations, potentially leading to the selection of inadequate security measures that fail to address significant risks. While budget is a practical concern, it should not supersede the fundamental requirement for effective public safety and adherence to legal mandates. Compromising on security effectiveness due to cost can have severe consequences. Finally, an approach that disregards established legal and ethical guidelines in favor of perceived expediency or immediate threat reduction is fundamentally flawed. This could involve implementing surveillance or access control measures that are not authorized by law or that violate established privacy norms. Such actions not only expose the organization to legal penalties, but also erode public trust and undermine the legitimacy of security efforts. Professional reasoning. Professionals in public safety and security must adopt a systematic, risk-based decision-making process. This begins with a thorough understanding of the specific environment and potential threats. The next step involves a comprehensive risk assessment to identify vulnerabilities and the likelihood and impact of various scenarios. Crucially, this assessment must be conducted within the bounds of applicable laws and ethical principles, which often include considerations of privacy, civil liberties, and proportionality. Recommendations for security enhancement should then be derived from this assessment, ensuring that they are both effective in mitigating identified risks and compliant with all relevant regulations. Continuous evaluation and adaptation of security strategies are also essential to maintain their relevance and effectiveness. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that the current risk management process often overemphasizes the probability of security incidents, while underestimating the potential severity of their consequences. This leads to a disproportionate allocation of resources towards low-impact, high-probability events. Which of the following approaches best addresses this deficiency in the impact assessment phase, aligning with the principles of robust risk management and regulatory expectations for a U.S.-based organization? Option A. Implementing a comprehensive business impact analysis, BIA, that systematically identifies and quantifies potential financial, operational, reputational, and legal consequences across all critical business functions and assets. Option B. Relying on the IT security team's expert judgment to subjectively estimate the potential damage from various threat scenarios based on past experiences. Option C. Focusing solely on the monetary cost of data breaches, as this is the most easily quantifiable and significant impact. Option D. Prioritizing risk treatment efforts based on the frequency of reported security alerts, assuming higher frequency implies higher overall risk. The correct answer is A. Implementing a comprehensive business impact analysis, BIA, that systematically identifies and quantifies potential financial, operational, reputational, and legal consequences across all critical business functions and assets. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a critical gap in the organization's risk management framework, specifically concerning the impact assessment phase. This scenario is professionally challenging because a flawed impact assessment can lead to misallocation of resources, ineffective risk mitigation strategies, and ultimately, significant business disruption or financial loss. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure that the potential consequences of identified risks are accurately understood and prioritized. The correct approach involves a systematic evaluation of the potential consequences of a risk event across various business functions and assets. This includes considering financial, operational, reputational, legal, and regulatory impacts. For a certified security professional, CSP, operating within the U.S. regulatory framework, this aligns with the principles of due diligence and the requirements of various regulations such as the NIST cybersecurity framework and potentially industry-specific regulations like HIPAA or SOX, which mandate understanding and managing the impact of security incidents. A thorough impact assessment ensures that the organization can prioritize risks based on their potential severity, guiding the selection of appropriate risk treatment strategies. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the likelihood of a threat occurring without adequately quantifying or qualifying its potential damage. This fails to acknowledge the core purpose of impact assessment, which is to understand the so what of a risk event. Another incorrect approach is to rely on anecdotal evidence or personal opinions rather than a structured methodology. This introduces bias and subjectivity, leading to an unreliable assessment of risk severity. Furthermore, an approach that only considers direct financial losses while ignoring intangible impacts like reputational damage or loss of customer trust is incomplete. Modern risk management, particularly under U.S. regulations, emphasizes a holistic view of impact, recognizing that non-financial consequences can often be more damaging in the long run. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the scope of the impact assessment. This involves identifying all relevant business processes, assets, and stakeholders. Next, a structured methodology, whether qualitative or quantitative, should be applied to assess potential impacts across different categories. This assessment should be documented and reviewed by relevant stakeholders to ensure accuracy and consensus. Finally, the results of the impact assessment should directly inform the risk treatment strategy, ensuring that resources are allocated to address the most significant risks first. Question 14. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the organization's use of a software as a service, SaaS, platform for customer relationship management, which handles sensitive customer data, may not fully align with U.S. federal data protection mandates, specifically concerning the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, and the Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA. Which of the following approaches best addresses this compliance and security gap? Option A. Assume that all data stored in cloud environments is inherently secure due to the advanced infrastructure provided by cloud vendors, and therefore no additional organizational controls are necessary. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the SAS provider's security certifications and contractual agreements. Implement robust organizational data security policies, including access controls and encryption, and deploy a cloud access security broker, CASP, to monitor and enforce security policies within the cloud environment. Option C. Focus solely on strengthening the organization's internal network security perimeter and assume that data within the SAS application is adequately protected by the provider. Option D. Rely on the SAS provider's stated compliance with industry best practices and assume their security measures are sufficient to meet all U.S. federal regulatory requirements. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of the SAS provider's security certifications and contractual agreements. Implement robust organizational data security policies, including access controls and encryption, and deploy a cloud access security broker, CASP, to monitor and enforce security policies within the cloud environment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the benefits of cloud adoption with the imperative to protect sensitive data and maintain regulatory compliance. The organization is leveraging a SAS application for customer relationship management, which inherently involves storing and processing customer personally identifiable information, PI. The challenge lies in ensuring that the security controls implemented by the SAS provider, combined with the organization's own security measures, are sufficient to meet the stringent data protection requirements mandated by U.S. federal regulations, specifically the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, given the potential for health-related data in CRM systems, and the Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA, for any government-related data. A failure to adequately assess and manage these risks can lead to significant data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the SAS provider's security posture and the organization's own data handling practices within the cloud environment. This includes verifying the provider's compliance with relevant U.S. regulations, e.g., HIPAA, FISMA, through audits, certifications like FedRAMP for government cloud services, and contractual agreements, business associate agreements for HIPAA. It also necessitates implementing robust data security measures at the organizational level, such as strong access controls, encryption of data at rest and in transit, regular security awareness training for employees, and the use of a cloud access security broker, CASP, to monitor and enforce security policies. This multi-layered approach ensures that both the cloud provider's responsibilities and the organization's responsibilities are met, aligning with the shared responsibility model in cloud security and adhering to U.S. regulatory frameworks. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on the SAS provider's assurances without independent verification is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Providers have security responsibilities. The organization remains ultimately accountable for protecting sensitive data under regulations like HIPAA and FISMA. This approach neglects the due diligence required to ensure the provider's controls are adequate and consistently applied. Implementing only technical controls within the organization's network without considering the cloud environment is also insufficient. Cloud security requires a holistic view that extends beyond the traditional network perimeter. Ignoring the security of data within the SAS application itself, or failing to monitor access to it, leaves critical vulnerabilities unaddressed and violates the principles of data protection mandated by U.S. law. Assuming that all cloud data is inherently secure due to the provider's infrastructure is a dangerous misconception. Cloud security is a shared responsibility. The organization must actively participate in securing its data and applications in the cloud, which includes understanding the provider's security model and implementing complementary controls. This assumption leads to a lack of proactive security measures and a failure to comply with regulatory requirements for data safeguarding. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this scenario should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This begins with identifying the sensitive data being processed in the cloud and the applicable U.S. regulatory requirements, e.g., HIPAA, FISMA, PCI DSS if applicable. Next, conduct a thorough assessment of the cloud provider's security controls and compliance posture, seeking evidence of adherence to relevant standards. Concurrently, evaluate the organization's own security policies, procedures, and technical controls for managing cloud services and data. This involves defining clear roles and responsibilities, establishing robust access management, implementing data encryption, and considering the use of CASP. Finally, document all assessments, decisions, and implemented controls, and establish a process for ongoing monitoring and review to ensure continued compliance and security. Question 15. The evaluation methodology shows that the new customer-facing e-commerce platform has undergone automated vulnerability scanning, identifying several medium-risk vulnerabilities. However, the development team is pushing for immediate deployment to meet a critical marketing deadline, and they propose to defer manual penetration testing and address only the critical vulnerabilities identified by the scanner before launch. As the certified security professional responsible for the platform's security, which approach best upholds your professional and regulatory obligations? Option A. Proceed with deployment after the development team addresses only the critical vulnerabilities identified by the automated scanner and schedule manual penetration testing for a post-deployment audit. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive vulnerability assessment including manual penetration testing and implement a structured patch management process for all identified vulnerabilities, prioritizing based on risk before authorizing deployment. Option C. Delay deployment indefinitely until all identified vulnerabilities, regardless of severity, are patched, even if it means missing the marketing deadline. Option D. Authorize immediate deployment with only the critical vulnerabilities addressed, and rely on the automated scanner's findings as sufficient for pre-deployment security assurance. Correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive vulnerability assessment including manual penetration testing and implement a structured patch management process for all identified vulnerabilities, prioritizing based on risk before authorizing deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in vulnerability management, where immediate business needs conflict with the thoroughness required for effective security. The challenge lies in balancing the pressure to deploy a new system quickly against the imperative to identify and remediate all critical vulnerabilities before it goes live. A rushed assessment could lead to significant security breaches, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties. The correct approach involves prioritizing a comprehensive vulnerability assessment that includes both automated scanning and manual penetration testing, followed by a structured patch management process. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and reasonable security practices expected of a certified security professional. Specifically, regulatory frameworks like those governing data protection, e.g., GDPR in a relevant jurisdiction, or similar U.S. federal/state laws if U.S. is specified, mandate that organizations implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. This includes proactive identification and mitigation of vulnerabilities. Ethical codes for security professionals also emphasize acting with integrity and competence, which necessitates thoroughness in security assessments. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on automated vulnerability scanning and skip manual penetration testing. This fails to meet the standard of a comprehensive assessment, as automated tools often miss complex or logic-based vulnerabilities that a skilled penetration tester can uncover. This could lead to a false sense of security and leave the organization exposed to threats that were not detected. Furthermore, neglecting a structured patch management process after identifying vulnerabilities or prioritizing patches based solely on ease of implementation rather than risk would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a lack of due care and could result in the exploitation of known weaknesses, leading to data breaches and non-compliance with security mandates. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves understanding the business context, the potential impact of a breach, and the likelihood of exploitation. When faced with pressure to expedite deployment, the professional must clearly articulate the risks associated with a compromised assessment to stakeholders. The decision should be guided by regulatory requirements for security, industry best practices, and the organization's own security policies, ensuring that security is not sacrificed for speed without a documented and accepted risk acceptance process. Question 16. Operational review demonstrates that a critical data exfiltration incident has occurred, impacting sensitive customer information. The immediate priority is to stop further data loss and restore affected systems, Which of the following actions best balances the need for rapid containment and recovery with the imperative to maintain regulatory compliance and facilitate a thorough post-incident investigation? Option A. Erase all logs and temporary files on affected systems to remove traces of the attacker's activity and expedite the restoration process, then proceed with recovery. Option B. Prioritize restoring affected systems to operational status as quickly as possible by reverting to known good backups, and address forensic analysis and regulatory reporting only after full service restoration. Option C. Contain the incident by blocking the exfiltration channel, but defer detailed forensic analysis and formal regulatory notification until the business impact is fully quantified, which may take several days. Option D. Immediately disconnect affected systems from the network, isolate them, and begin forensic imaging of all compromised devices before any restoration attempts. Concurrently, initiate predefined communication protocols with legal, compliance, and relevant regulatory bodies. The correct answer is D. Immediately disconnect affected systems from the network, isolate them, and begin forensic imaging of all compromised devices before any restoration attempts. Concurrently, initiate predefined communication protocols with legal, compliance, and relevant regulatory bodies. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate incident containment with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise evidence or violate reporting requirements. Careful judgment is needed to ensure that the incident response process adheres to established protocols and legal obligations. The correct approach involves a structured incident response methodology that prioritizes evidence preservation and regulatory adherence throughout all phases. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible data handling expected of a certified security professional. Specifically, it emphasizes the importance of maintaining an accurate and complete audit trail, which is crucial for post-incident analysis, legal proceedings, and demonstrating compliance with relevant data protection regulations. The communication protocols ensure that all stakeholders are informed appropriately, minimizing panic and facilitating coordinated action. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on rapid system restoration without proper evidence collection would fail to meet regulatory requirements for incident investigation and reporting. This could lead to an inability to determine the root cause, prevent recurrence, or satisfy legal obligations regarding data breach notification. Another incorrect approach that involves premature deletion of logs or system configurations to expedite recovery would be a direct violation of data retention policies and potentially evidence tampering laws, severely undermining any subsequent investigation and legal defense. An approach that delays or omits communication with relevant regulatory bodies or affected parties, when mandated by law, constitutes a significant ethical and legal failure, leading to fines and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the incident response plan and relevant legal and regulatory obligations. This framework involves 1. Immediate assessment of the incident's scope and impact. 2. Activation of the incident response team. 3. Adherence to containment and eradication procedures that prioritize evidence preservation. 4. Systematic recovery with thorough validation. 5. Comprehensive post-incident analysis. And 6. Timely and accurate communication with all required parties. This structured approach ensures that all actions are defensible, compliant, and contribute to organizational resilience. Question 17. The audit findings indicate that the facility's hazardous materials inventory is not being consistently managed, and a recent minor spill of an unknown chemical in a storage area was initially contained by an untrained employee using only paper towels, without activating the emergency response plan or notifying the safety officer. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate professional response to this situation? Option A. Document the incident as a minor operational issue, advise the employee on better containment methods for future minor spills, and focus on improving general housekeeping in the storage area. Option B. Immediately initiate the facility's emergency response plan, focusing on hazardous materials handling protocols, ensuring appropriate PPE is used, and thoroughly investigating the cause of the spill and the employee's actions. Option C. Escalate the incident to the immediate supervisor and await their explicit direction on how to proceed with containment and reporting, given the unknown nature of the spilled substance. Option D. Instruct the employee to continue monitoring the area and to report any further issues, while planning to review the hazardous materials inventory management procedures at the next scheduled safety committee meeting. Correct answer is B. Immediately initiate the facility's emergency response plan, focusing on hazardous materials handling protocols, ensuring appropriate PPE is used, and thoroughly investigating the cause of the spill and the employee's actions. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with the critical, non-negotiable requirements of emergency preparedness and regulatory compliance. The security professional must demonstrate leadership in a situation where a perceived short-term benefit, maintaining operations, directly conflicts with long-term safety and legal obligations. Careful judgment is required to prioritize safety and compliance over expediency. The correct approach involves immediately halting non-essential operations and initiating the documented emergency response plan, specifically focusing on the hazardous materials handling protocols. This is the right professional choice because it directly addresses the identified risk in a systematic, compliant manner. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing workplace safety and environmental protection e.g. OSHA HAZWOPER in the U.S., or similar national regulations, mandate specific procedures for dealing with hazardous material releases. Adhering to the established emergency response plan ensures that the response is coordinated, that personnel are adequately protected, and that environmental impact is minimized, all of which are legal and ethical imperatives. An incorrect approach of attempting to contain the spill without proper personal protective equipment, PPE, and without activating the full emergency response plan is professionally unacceptable. This action directly violates hazardous materials handling regulations, which require appropriate PPE and trained personnel for any spill response. It also bypasses established emergency procedures, potentially leading to inadequate containment, increased exposure risks for employees, and environmental damage, all of which carry significant legal liabilities and ethical breaches. Another incorrect approach of waiting for a supervisor's explicit instruction before initiating the emergency plan, despite clear evidence of a hazardous material release, is also professionally flawed. While chain of command is important, established emergency plans typically empower individuals to act when immediate threats to safety or the environment are present. Delaying action in such a critical situation constitutes a failure to uphold the duty of care and can be seen as negligence, violating both regulatory requirements for prompt response and the ethical obligation to protect life and property. A further incorrect approach of downplaying the incident to avoid disruption and only considering a full response if the situation escalates significantly is highly problematic. This demonstrates a severe lapse in professional judgment and a disregard for regulatory mandates. Emergency preparedness is proactive, not reactive. Hazardous materials incidents can escalate rapidly, and a delayed response significantly increases the risk of severe consequences, including serious injury, fatalities, and substantial environmental damage, all of which are direct violations of safety regulations and ethical principles. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Immediate assessment of the situation against established emergency protocols. 2. Prioritizing the safety of personnel and the environment. 3. Activating the relevant sections of the emergency response plan without delay. 4. Ensuring all actions are compliant with applicable regulations. And 5. Documenting all steps taken and communicating effectively with relevant stakeholders. Question 18. The risk matrix shows a moderate to high risk of privacy infringement associated with the proposed deployment of advanced CCTV systems equipped with behavioral analysis video analytics in a corporate office environment. The security team is considering a system capable of real-time anomaly detection, such as identifying unusual loitering patterns or unauthorized access attempts. What is the most appropriate decision-making framework for the certified security professional, CSP, to adopt in this situation? Option A. Deploy the CCTV system without the behavioral analytics feature initially, and consider adding it later if security incidents increase to mitigate immediate privacy concerns. Option B. Rely on the vendor's assurances regarding the system's privacy-preserving features and implement basic access controls for the recorded footage. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive privacy impact assessment, PIA, to evaluate the necessity, proportionality, and legal basis for using behavioral analytics, and develop clear policies for data handling and retention, ensuring compliance with relevant data protection regulations before deployment. Option D. Proceed with the deployment of the CCTV system with behavioral analytics, focusing on configuring the system to alert security personnel to potential threats, as the primary goal is to enhance physical security. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the deployment of the CCTV system with behavioral analytics, focusing on configuring the system to alert security personnel to potential threats, as the primary goal is to enhance physical security. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between enhancing security through advanced surveillance technology and respecting individual privacy rights, particularly in a public or semi-public space. The certified security professional, CSP, must balance the organization's legitimate security needs with legal and ethical obligations. The risk matrix highlights a moderate to high risk associated with potential privacy breaches, necessitating a decision-making process that prioritizes compliance and ethical considerations. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment that integrates technical capabilities with legal and ethical frameworks. This includes understanding the specific capabilities of the video analytics software, such as its ability to identify individuals, track movements, or detect specific behaviors, and then evaluating these against the relevant privacy laws and organizational policies. The decision to deploy or configure the system must be guided by the principle of proportionality, ensuring that the surveillance measures are necessary and proportionate to the identified security risks, and that less intrusive means have been considered. This aligns with the principles of data protection and privacy by design, which are increasingly embedded in regulatory frameworks governing surveillance. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize the technical capabilities of the video analytics without a thorough privacy impact assessment. This could lead to the deployment of systems that collect or process personal data in ways that are not legally permissible or ethically justifiable, potentially violating regulations concerning data minimization, purpose limitation, and consent. For instance, deploying analytics that perform facial recognition for general monitoring without a specific, legitimate purpose and legal basis would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on vendor claims about system capabilities without independent verification or understanding of how these capabilities translate into actual data processing. This can result in a misapprehension of the system's privacy implications. Furthermore, neglecting to establish clear policies and procedures for the use, retention, and access of video data, especially when enhanced by analytics, creates a significant risk of misuse and noncompliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify the security objective and the proposed surveillance solution. 2. Conduct a thorough privacy impact assessment, PIA, to identify potential privacy risks associated with the technology, particularly the video analytics. 3. Review relevant legal and regulatory requirements, e.g., data protection laws, specific surveillance regulations, to determine permissible uses and necessary safeguards. 4. Evaluate the proportionality of the proposed surveillance measures against the identified risks and objectives. 5. Develop clear policies and procedures for system operation, data handling, and access control, ensuring these are communicated and enforced. 6. Obtain necessary approvals and ensure ongoing compliance through regular audits and reviews. Question 19. The monitoring system demonstrates the capability to capture granular user activity logs, including keystrokes and screen captures, across all company endpoints for enhanced threat detection. What is the most appropriate approach for managing this data to ensure both robust security and regulatory compliance? Option A. Grant all members of the security operations team full, unrestricted access to all raw log data to ensure they have complete visibility for immediate threat response. Option B. Retain all captured keystroke and screen capture logs indefinitely to serve as a comprehensive historical record for any future forensic investigations. Option C. Implement a strict tiered access control policy for raw log data, limiting access to authorized security analysts with a documented need to know, and establish a defined data retention schedule with automated anonymization or purging of sensitive information after a justifiable period. Option D. Disable the capture of keystroke and screen capture data on all endpoints to completely eliminate any potential privacy concerns associated with this type of monitoring. The correct answer is C. Implement a strict tiered access control policy for raw log data, limiting access to authorized security analysts with a documented need to know, and establish a defined data retention schedule with automated anonymization or purging of sensitive information after a justifiable period. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for security visibility with the long-term implications of data privacy and regulatory compliance. The certified security professional, CSP, must navigate the complex landscape of data handling, access controls, and potential misuse of sensitive information, all while ensuring effective threat detection. Careful judgment is required to avoid overstepping legal boundaries or creating vulnerabilities through overly broad data collection. The correct approach involves implementing a tiered access and retention policy for the monitoring system's data. This means that while the system collects comprehensive logs for immediate threat analysis, access to raw, sensitive data is strictly controlled and limited to authorized personnel with a demonstrated need to know. Furthermore, data retention periods are defined and enforced, ensuring that personally identifiable information, PI, or other sensitive data is anonymized or purged after a specified, justifiable duration. This approach aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental in many data protection regulations, such as the U.S. framework under NIST guidelines and relevant state laws concerning data privacy and security. The ethical imperative is to protect individual privacy while maintaining organizational security. An incorrect approach would be to grant broad, unrestricted access to all monitoring system data to all security personnel. This fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of secure system design and a common regulatory expectation. It significantly increases the risk of data breaches, insider threats, and unauthorized access to sensitive information, potentially violating privacy laws and leading to severe legal and reputational consequences. Another incorrect approach is to retain all collected monitoring data indefinitely without any anonymization or purging policy. This violates data minimization principles and creates an unnecessary liability. Regulations often mandate that data should not be kept longer than necessary for its intended purpose. Indefinite retention increases the attack surface and the potential impact of a data breach, as more sensitive information would be exposed. A third incorrect approach is to disable logging of certain types of sensitive data altogether to avoid privacy concerns. While well-intentioned, this can create significant blind spots in the security monitoring capabilities. A CSP's responsibility is to ensure comprehensive security posture, which includes having adequate visibility into potential threats. The solution is not to eliminate visibility, but to manage the data responsibly and in compliance with regulations. This approach fails to meet the security objectives and could leave the organization vulnerable to attacks that might have been detected with proper logging. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing the likelihood and impact of security incidents, and then implementing controls that are proportionate to the identified risks. When dealing with monitoring systems and sensitive data, this framework necessitates a thorough understanding of applicable legal and regulatory requirements, a commitment to data privacy principles, and the implementation of robust access controls and data lifecycle management policies. The goal is to achieve effective security without compromising legal obligations or ethical responsibilities. Question 20. The performance metrics show a significant increase in security incidents related to unauthorized access and data exfiltration over the past quarter. As the CISO, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and comprehensive response to address this trend? Option A. Immediately implement a broad range of new, highly restrictive security controls across all systems to prevent further unauthorized access, without a detailed analysis of their operational impact. Option B. Allocate the entire security budget for the next fiscal year to acquiring the latest intrusion detection and prevention systems, while postponing employee security awareness training. Option C. Defer any significant action until the next scheduled security audit, assuming the recent increase in incidents is a temporary fluctuation. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive review of existing security policies, standards, and procedures, followed by targeted updates to security awareness training and a thorough testing of the incident response and business continuity plans. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive review of existing security policies, standards, and procedures, followed by targeted updates to security awareness training and a thorough testing of the incident response and business continuity plans. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant increase in security incidents related to unauthorized access and data exfiltration over the past quarter. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts the organization's security posture, potentially leading to financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties. The Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, must make a critical decision regarding the immediate response to these metrics, balancing operational needs with security imperatives. Careful judgment is required to ensure the chosen course of action aligns with the organization's risk appetite, legal obligations, and strategic objectives. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of existing security policies, standards, and procedures to identify gaps or weaknesses that contributed to the increased incidents. This review should be followed by an immediate update and reinforcement of security awareness training programs, focusing on the specific threats observed. Concurrently, the incident response plan should be activated and tested, and business continuity and disaster recovery plans should be assessed for their effectiveness in mitigating the impact of such incidents. This approach is justified by the principles of proactive security management and due diligence, as mandated by various regulatory frameworks such as the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, which is a widely adopted best practice in the U.S. and thus relevant to CSP exam context and industry standards like ISO 27001. These frameworks emphasize continuous improvement, risk assessment, and the implementation of appropriate controls to protect information assets. Ethical considerations also demand that the organization takes all reasonable steps to protect its stakeholders' data and maintain operational integrity. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the metrics as a temporary anomaly and delay any significant action, hoping the trend will reverse on its own. This fails to acknowledge the potential for escalating threats and the organization's responsibility to address security vulnerabilities promptly. Such an action could lead to severe regulatory noncompliance, as many laws e.g., HIPAA in the U.S. for healthcare data, or GDPR if applicable to data processed, require organizations to implement reasonable security measures and respond effectively to breaches. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a broad, sweeping set of new, overly restrictive security controls without a proper risk assessment or consideration of their impact on business operations. While well-intentioned, this can lead to user frustration, decreased productivity, and may not address the root cause of the incidents. It also deviates from the principle of risk-based security, which advocates for controls proportionate to the identified risks. Furthermore, it bypasses the necessary policy review and update process, potentially creating new vulnerabilities or inefficiencies. A third incorrect approach would be to solely focus on technical solutions without addressing the human element. For instance, investing heavily in new firewalls or intrusion detection systems while neglecting to reinforce security awareness training for employees. This is a failure to recognize that many security incidents stem from human error or negligence. Effective security governance requires a layered approach that includes technical, administrative, and physical controls, as well as a well-informed workforce. Professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and validate the data. Treat performance metrics as critical indicators of the security posture. 2. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis. Investigate the specific types of incidents, their frequency, and potential contributing factors. 3. Review and update policies and procedures. Ensure they are current, comprehensive, and effectively communicated. 4. Enhance security awareness training. Tailor training to address identified vulnerabilities and threats. 5. Test and refine incident response and business continuity plans. Ensure readiness for future events. 6. Communicate findings and actions. Inform relevant stakeholders about the situation and the steps being taken. 7. Monitor and measure effectiveness. Continuously track metrics to assess the impact of implemented changes.